It was a little forced, but I'm not opposed to a little force.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Vassals of Kingsgrave, an offshoot of a podcast of Ice and Fire, the longest-running podcast devoted to George R.R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire book series, and sometimes Game of Thrones, as well as all things nerdy. All views expressed here today are those of the individual vassal and not of VOK as a whole. In today's episode, we'll be discussing the epic finale of Netflix's TV series Sense8, titled Amor Vincit Omnia, or Love Conquers All. This episode is a follow-up to VOK episode 407, which was devoted to the first two seasons of the series. This episode will spoil all events in the entire series of Sense8. My name is David, a.k.a. davidhhh on the forums. I'll be your host today, and I am joined by Marie, who did an excellent job of hosting our first Sense8 podcast.
Oh, that's nice, David. That was my first, actually.
Really?
Hey, hi, everyone. I'm Mary, and I'm Nymeria on the forums.
Hannah.
Hey, it's Shadowbaby on the forums.
Matt.
Hey, it's Blue Armor on the forums.
Jock.
Hello, my little Jock on the forums.
And James.
Hello, QueenJames on the forums.
So let's start with our ratings. I'm going to let Jock go first because we normally on Game of Thrones stuff and Song of Ice and Fire stuff use lemon cakes as our ratings, but Jock came up with a brilliant idea for this one. So Jock, go first.
I do 3 out of 5 clusterfucks. Kind of reminded me of Babylon 5 Season 4 and how pace and structure were changed to try and fit in a lot more stuff.
Mm-hmm. James, what do you think?
I give it 4 out of 5 clusterfucks. I would reach for 5, but I just think the pacing was off.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to remember that this was, fan service. They did it for us, so I
Totally.
think they jammed as much in as they possibly could, which I appreciated, but it also made the pacing weird. So I give it 4 clusterfucks.
Mm-hmm. How about Hannah?
Oh, I absolutely 100% give it 8 out of 8. I get what you're saying, James, and I wholeheartedly agree, but I just really don't fucking care.
Yep.
The fact that we got anything at all, and if George was to do something like this, even with the books, and just give us the highlights, the bullet points, if he couldn't or wouldn't finish, then I'd be happy. This is so much better than nothing at all. With Firefly, we got nothing for a million years, and then the shittiest, horriblest movie ever. That was not the point, and at least they were true to their story and showed us what it could have been, and I loved it.
I completely agree with Hannah. Yeah, just so happy that there was anything, and I think maybe it was you actually, Hannah, who said on the last podcast, I just hope that each and every one of these characters just go and live together in a big house. And I felt like this whole episode was just that. All of them, including the friends and families and people not necessarily in the cluster, which was great. So I just loved seeing everyone all the time just because of that. So yeah, I'm not going to make the same joke as Hannah, but 5 out of 5 clusterfucks, definitely.
Matt?
So yeah, I agree with what has mostly been said here. If I was judging it just based on kind of what I wanted and what I hoped I would get out of the finale, it delivered that in spades. 5 out of 5. But being more kind of objective about it, there was a lot crammed in there. It was very fast-paced, a lot of narrative convenience just to kind of work out an ending, and the action was quite ridiculous at times.
Yep.
We'll talk about that later. So taking some more points off that, it'd still be a 4.5, man, because it still left a warm, fuzzy feeling in my heart at the end of it all.
I'm going to give it 4.75 for all the reasons everyone said. In my heart, I want to give it a 27. Realistically, yeah, pacing was really weird. The ultra-violence and all that action was a little jarring. So I'm taking off just a tiny little bit. But in my heart, it was everything I wanted it to be. Let's talk a little bit about the campaign to save the show. As most of you probably know, Netflix canceled the show in June of last year. Fans were extremely upset, to say the least, and campaigned to bring the show back. Less than a month later, Netflix announced that because of all the demand, there would be a movie to wrap up the series. The 2.5-hour finale aired in June. So this is a thing now. This was one of the first shows that this happened with, although a couple had. It's now becoming a thing. Like Netflix listened to us. The fans screamed and freaked out and were all upset online. And now we're seeing this with Brooklyn Nine-Nine, The Expanse, Lucifer, a whole bunch of other shows. What do you think of this?
They kind of fall into two different categories. I think Sense8 and The Expanse can be compared to be in very similar situations, because the main reason why these two were canceled were not because of the lack of quality in the show, but just because it was so expensive to produce those two shows. Right. Relative to the people funding them. I mean, yeah, Netflix kind of has infinite money to spend on things, but even so, Sense8 really push the boundaries in a way that's similarly to how Deadwood did back in the day, which was a big reason why that show was canceled.
Wasn't Sense8 something like $9 million an episode to produce or something?
Yeah,
like that?
it's entirely because of shooting on location, which was, it was necessary. The show wouldn't be the same without the location shooting, so you couldn't do it otherwise. And The Expanse is a similar vein where it was, a very expensive show versus sci-fi, which just doesn't have the money to sustain it.
Right.
So yeah, I'm glad we got something out of it, and I honestly think this was the perfect way to end it while not spending too much on it. By doing 2.5 hours.
So here's the thing that kind of cheeses me off about it, though. They were at a point in the show where it would have become probably much cheaper to shoot, given that now all the characters are together. So for 90% of it, you don't have to be in 8 places in the world with everyone shooting it again and again and again and again and again.
I'm not sure that would have remained, but
no, but I mean, I still think they'll still be in large groups. They're never going to be spread out like that again, right? And I don't know. They never were in the finale, completely all far flung, all 8 of them. They were at least together in pairs or threes.
We have to remember, though, that we're not sure what the original 3 seasons, they had 3 more they were planning, would have been. One of the main reasons they brought everyone together, because I was reading about this online, was that they wanted to keep people in a few cities that were relatively near each other. That's why everything happens in Europe, for that reason, to save money, and because they filmed the entire thing in 27 days. So I don't know that's true, but it may be. It's hard to say what they would have done. You write to what you have to do, so...
Yeah, I just feel like it should have been another season, really, and they could have demonstrated that would work, I think.
Right.
Also, I don't think that Netflix should be looked at as the fucking savior here, because they did 0 to advertise it and promote it.
Really?
I mean, I never saw...
I saw stuff everywhere.
For this show, except for the fact that it would come up in my, just when you're popping around through Netflix. I never saw an advertisement for it while it was in its first 2 seasons. I only ever saw shit for it after the campaign had started to bring it back.
I actually saw more for the finale than I saw for any of the first 2 seasons. Yeah. That's a fair point.
Yeah, and, they do it with other shows. I see shit all the time for their crappy shows that I don't care about. No offense, Netflix. I mean, I love a lot of their things, but there's a bunch of shit I could care less about. And I'm like, it's just in my face all the time. However, to Netflix credit, if you're listening, they did bring back Arrested Development. And then when that was really terrible and not why did you bring it back if you're going to do that to it, they also allowed the showrunners to go and re-edit it and then created another season that was more true to form for the first 3. So, I do like that they listened to their fans. When we were growing up, a network would never have done anything like this.
Right.
And it would have all been about the bottom line for a network and take it and like it kind of thing. So it's good, it's bad, but it could have been a lot better. They definitely could have done more.
I think that basically Netflix, it's an industry, it's a company. They just make decisions based on money, and that's fair. I mean, it's definitely fair. However, they did listen to us for this and produce this 2.5 hours finale, which looked like it cost a fortune.
Right? That's where I was going.
They were on the Eiffel Tower. They threw a fucking fireworks out from the Eiffel Tower. I mean, yeah, it definitely looks like there was a lot of money spent on that. So I think they did probably all they could, and they still made a gesture. But I understand you, Hannah. I'm also too disappointed about the actual cancellation.
Here's the thing, Hannah. It was one of the most expensive shows ever made. $9 million an episode. Game of Thrones, I don't think costs that now.
But
Friends
I don't think
at
it's
the
the
end
most
did.
expensive show. Like, Seinfeld and Friends at the end.
No, it
when
really
you
was.
think about the time back then, just their salaries alone were fucking more than that.
Seinfeld got, 10, 15 million viewers. We don't have ratings figures for this, but from what everything they said, from what I've heard, they loved this show and wanted to keep it going, but it was so expensive. And here's the thing. The show was canceled. Like it or not, for better or for worse, it was canceled because ultimately they decided they weren't taking in enough money to be able to afford to keep it going. Then the fans complained and had a whole thing online, and they listened. And they could have brought it back and said, look, we're going to give you $5 million and you need to film this in one city and you need to make it cheap and you need to wrap this up. And they really could have done that. And I mean, I think it's pretty clear watching this that they spent a shitload of money on this. I was actually really shocked watching this, that we're now heading out to Italy and we're doing the Eiffel Tower and all this stuff. It's clear to me that whatever budget they gave them, that the Sense8 people said, well, we need more. And they went, oh, well, okay. And for that, I got to give him credit. In fact, it was originally supposed to be 2 hours at most, and Lana and the others asked for another half hour so they could have that big half-hour ending where we get the Eiffel Tower and the orgy and everything, and they gave it to them. So for a show you've canceled and you've said we're done with, they threw a ton of money at this, and I got to give them credit for that. I mean, I wish the show was going on for 3 more years. We all do, obviously, or we wouldn't be here talking passionately about it. But I'm going to give them credit. They took a show they'd given up on and said, we're going to throw a ton of money at you. It's a decision. It was made, and then they gave us what we wanted afterwards. And I want to support them for that, because how many sci-fi, fantasy, genre, or anything shows have ended on a cliffhanger and you never find out what happens? They let them finish the story. They did finish the story. Would you have rather they just said, nope, we canceled it, and then we never got to see what happened? I mean, I was so happy during this entire thing. They gave us a huge present that cost them a shitload of money, and I don't think they made money on. You can't market, well, there's only one more episode. Like, that's not something you can market big. So maybe that'll bring people in to watch the first 2 seasons. I don't know. But they spent a whole lot of money to make us happy. So I'm going to be grateful.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that I'm not grateful. And obviously I wouldn't want this to have not come about. I think where credit is due is with Lana and Lily and what they created. And
don't forget JMS. John Michael Krasinski did a lot of that too.
Yeah, I don't feel like Netflix is this like deity that came in and saved the world here necessarily. It's just they could have done more to begin with. I'm glad that they made it right, obviously. But
they're a business. They're a business. They're all about making money. But in this case, they made a decision that I think ultimately may not financially pay off, but made us really happy. So I'm gonna give them credit for that. And more importantly, I'm gonna give the fans. Fans online did a whole lot and made this happen. And it's made this happen with all these other shows we're talking about. And I'm glad for once they're actually listening to us. There's so many things that could have just ended, and we're gonna get more Expanse. We're gonna get more Lucifer. For those who like Brooklyn Nine-Nine, you're going to get more of that. Other shows, I'm sure there's a whole bunch we can talk about, and the shows they're bringing back after, decades off the air. I mean, if they're listening to people, right? I mean, if they're listening to people, great. It's about time the media world listened to us. Now, us breadcrumbs.
But at the same time, that's the natural evolution of where we're going with everything being on demand. Everything's on demand, so why can't we demand it?
One thing I also liked is that in the build up to this, they did a whole lot of marketing. They went to prides all over America and North America marketing this, which is odd for a thing when there's only one movie left. So I was glad that they kind of built into that sense of community. They put out a whole bunch of viral videos. They released a video of all the fans singing "What's Up" at Sao Paulo Pride. they actually at the premiere.
I love that video too.
Right, it's amazing. The whole crowd. Imagine being there with that whole crowd singing with the stars on stage. What's up, everyone together? Hey, I almost want all of us to sing it right now, but let's not because we don't want to burden our listeners with my horrible off-tone voice. But
let's not.
I don't know if you saw the video, but at the premiere of the finale in California, they actually had the original singer of this come out and sing it. And they asked people to come up on stage. So all the fans ran up on stage with the stars and they were all singing What's Up together. Like, that's amazing, right? I would kill to have been any of those.
I just wanted to mention, I think maybe the only justification I have for the fact that they didn't market season 1 like they should have is maybe they wanted, because I think if they released too much information on it, the way that you would perceive the show would be different. I feel like we learned about being Sense8 through them learning about it. So if we would have had a base knowledge coming in, I think that you would have perceived the show differently. And that's the only justification I have for the fact that they didn't market season 1 like they did. There's no reason, I don't think, why they didn't market season 2. Like Hannah was saying, with Stranger Things, I mean, that's everywhere. And I didn't find out about Sense8. The only reason I found out about Sense8 was at that time I was kind of away from Netflix. I wasn't really watching it so much, and my sister-in-law talked to me about it, and she said it's amazing and you'll love it. And I thought to myself, well, this isn't really, I don't see it in media. I don't see a huge response to it, so I didn't even get to it for a while. And then once I started watching it, I was like, holy shit, where have I been missing? What has been going on? So yeah, I just think the marketing with season 1 may be justified by that, but anything after that, there's no reason why they shouldn't have pushed the show.
Yeah, I mean, there was no teaser, little things, anything. Just getting the name out there, a 10-second clip in the name, you know, like getting hype and stuff. And I mean, to be fair, Stranger Things isn't as graphic sexually or in its violence, I don't think. And so it is a little more... I don't want to say family friendly, but like kind of is, you know.
Yeah, no, definitely.
You can easily have a younger viewership with that show than you can with this. I would not say this is appropriate for anyone under about 16, probably. But then again, it kind of is. Like, it kind of is too, because it's beautiful.
Right, it's beautiful, it's sex. It is graphic, though, in both the violence and the sex. And that's fine. You know, I mean, I guess the one thing I would say is I'm just so impressed with how the fans got together on this. I mean, you know, we talk about, I remember when you guys on the first VOC podcast talked about like the idea of clusters around the world and how VOC is very much kind of a cluster. And I love that this show brought that point of view around to the fans, that people all around the world felt connected through this and felt connected enough to try to fight to save it. And that's what I kind of want to leave this part of the discussion with, this amazing accomplishment that we all got together from our love of the show and these characters, and they listened. And I'm psyched about that. And the finale was, as we're about to talk about, kind of everything I hoped it would be. And we got that because the fans said, please give us this. So awesome. Okay, let's get back to the actual story here, and let's start with our overall impressions. I think the first thing to talk about is the pacing. It was weird. They were planning on 3 more series of the show. I was really surprised that I feel like we got almost everything they wanted to do. They somehow managed to cram it all in 2.5 hours. I'm not sure that was the right choice. We could talk about that, but there was so much story in there, so much of this conspiracy arc, so much of all of the BPO stuff. And we had all these huge set pieces all over. Were you expecting that? Was it too much? Was it just right? Would you have liked them to have leave some of it out? What do you think?
I think coming into it knowing that this is, you know, something that they did for the fans, the pacing is acceptable. Being that we knew that there should have been 3 more seasons, you could kind of pinpoint where the highlights or what the drama would be per season. Like, I definitely think getting into the, what was it called? Like the Hakuna Matata, whatever that, you know, high.
I love it. I love it.
Hakuna Matata.
I love it. We're all going to talk about that now.
That is its official title from now on.
From now on. You can name it.
Oh, jeez.
You know, I think us knowing, if you came into the show with very little knowledge of it and just watched the entire 24 episodes, you would think at the end, like, what the hell was that? But because we know that this is fan service, they were just giving us, you know, a taste of everything that they had.
Yeah.
The pacing was rough, but it was necessary to give us everything that we needed.
I think even all things considered, it's still brilliant. That's why I give it 8 out of 8. If you take a look at it objectively, like Matt was saying, it's still great. It still stands on its own 2 feet. Do you think Milton Whispers, he does make it through to the final act? Do you think that would have been the case had they moved on with the show at a normal clip? Or I feel like he would have been offed in the next season, and then we would have moved into that, you know, a different boss level.
He, to me, was the bad. All the other characters I don't care about. So I feel like he was the best thing they had to offer in this storyline. And I can't imagine them getting rid of him because he was so creepy. He was the very face of the bad guy. So I can't imagine getting rid of him, but who knows? I don't think we should speculate too much on what they would have done because it's hard to say. They were hoping for 3 more seasons. That's what they said. And we got 2.5 hours. What surprised me in all this is it feels to me like they threw almost everything they were planning to do in here, and I wonder if that was the best choice. We could have, I think, cut down those 3 major action pieces to like 1 or 2, and I would have been totally fine with it. What about the rest of you? Did you even care about the conspiracy storyline all that much? I mean, I care about Sun's story, I care about Kala's story, I care about all these other characters. How did you feel about this whole thing? Like, did you want to know how it ends? Did you care about all these little details? Did you care about the lacuna? Did you, all that stuff? I'm sorry, the Hakuna Matata.
It's the one thing I just don't remember. Like,
exactly.
I'm like, what happened with that already?
It was around, for some reason, Riley and Will were going through a train station and they were attacked by the bald girl with the tattoo on her head.
Did you even know who they were? Did you remember? I did. I had no idea.
I remember her because I binged everything up to it. I re-binged everything, and I do have to say, watching the finale again, because I watched it twice, the second time it was a lot easier to understand.
Right.
But I just think that the next season would have been an entire season of getting to know the Hakuna Matata, and then after that, BPO, it would have been about the BPO conspiracy, and then I think the final season would have been trying to track down Whispers, just because I think being that the Hakuna Matata's head mother was Whispers' mother, Sense8 mother, I think that we would have had a season in between to kind of focus on a different villain before they brought him back. So I do think the sequence that they gave it to us was what they would have done.
Exactly.
That's my point, though, because I kind of feel like Whispers, he's the Joffrey, but then there's a Victorian that they bring up in there. Do you know what I'm saying? There's another villain. Sorry, but maybe we'd be done with him.
I don't think so. I think he's the only interesting one of those villains. I wouldn't, if they got rid of him, they'd be stupid because he's the only one I gave a shit about. I mean, not that I did, but he was so creepy and so well done. If they got rid of him, that would be dumb, I think.
Right, and they gave him enough backstory, actually too much backstory, to have him offed and then bring in a new villain. I think that the chairman would have kind of just held us over until we can focus on Whispers again. I think they would have gotten him out somehow, Whispers would have escaped somehow, and then come back in season 5 or 6 as being their final villain. Someone that they have to face again. Their original bad boy.
Yeah, I agree.
What do you think about his motivation?
Whispers' motivation?
Yeah, but it's not daddy issues, but is in fact immortality.
Yeah, see, that was something that I think they touched on, but they didn't express it enough to make me understand that that was what, his main focus was immortality. I thought that his entire speech about reading books and cracking open books for knowledge, and so he had to do the same with human bodies because inside the human body is all these secrets. I almost saw him as being a more sadistic mad scientist rather than someone that was rather than someone who was creating immortality. Yeah.
I thought it was a weaker version of Siler before.
Of who?
Siler, from the TV show Heroes.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much. Yep. Very much so. Yeah, and actually, now that you mention it, the whole, cracking open someone's head to get the secrets inside is very Siler from Heroes.
Yeah,
I didn't think about that until you brought it up.
That's brilliant. Jock always comes up with those brilliant illusions. He stays quiet and then, boom, comes out with the knowledge.
Knowledge bomb.
Overall, here's the question I guess I have is, Do you feel like you wanted to find out all of this conspiracy stuff? Could we have cut half of that out and would you have given a shit? Or did you really want to get more of the BPO and all these side groups and all that? That's the thing for me is like, I feel like I could have done without. We could have had 2.5 hours of just wrapping these character stories up and then 10 minutes of I guess we have this conspiracy stuff. And I would have been fine with that.
To be honest, I always preferred the more minor villains, the sort of East German gangsters or the abusive ex to
Agreed.
the big conspiracy villains.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, me too, completely. But I also think that at the end of season 2, they do have to find Wolfgang.
Right.
And it would have been very weird if they had spent 15 minutes wrapping
Right.
up the whole BPO thing. And the whole of season 2 was already very BPO oriented, so it was fair that they would try to wrap this up extensively. And I understand why they did it, but I didn't care that much. Yeah,
it's like the ground prong. It's what keeps them all tethered.
Right.
To each other in a sense, and I like that they included it because you didn't really get the whole thing, but you got shades of where they were going to go. Like I said in the beginning, same thing. I mean, if all we get is the bullet points for Song of Ice and Fire, I would at least want to see that. At least be able to read some sort of outline for it and just know and be able to fill in my own blanks at least, rather than have just questions and nothing. And whether I like it or not really it's fine, because I'm giving it credit to know that I would have loved it probably.
Yep.
Right.
Well, I think we also have to respect the fact that these showrunners, they did have 3 seasons planned. They probably had all of this thought out. So just to leave it all cut out, all of their where they wanted to go with the series, it was fan service, but it was also for them to get all their storyline that they had built up inside of them out onto a screen. We got what they wanted to show. Because I think it would have been a disservice to them to just give us everyone's storyline finished up and then cut out everything that they had already planned on doing.
Fair enough.
I like the way that it ended. The pacing was weird, but we just got to give it to them.
Well, doesn't that kind of speak to one of the great flaws of this show, in that in most TV shows you have your major storyline and then you have your character stuff on the side. In this case, I think most of us are saying that the main storyline we didn't give a shit about. And it was the moments of these characters that we loved. That's definitely the case for me. Do the rest of you agree? And I wonder if that's a problem for a show when your main storyline isn't compelling enough that anyone cares, or maybe it's just that your other stuff is so much better. I don't know which. Did any of you really care about the BPO storyline at all?
I think in this case you said it. It's because the other stuff is so great and so amazing that you're kind of the kind of action conspiracy, they're being hunted down. We've seen it before, and when it's not that interesting. I agree that it's a problem, but I also think that without that, there's not really a show, because they are experiencing the beginning of being a cluster, but without a bigger thing to bring them together and bring them actually in the same places. I wish they could have found something different to bring them together, but as it is, it's what does it.
Yeah, it was something needed to like you said, to bring them together on one topic.
Did any of us care about the storyline at all? Just curious. Anyway, feel free.
I did.
Good. Talk about it.
But it's just because of, it's also what I look for in kind of fantasy sci-fi stories, where I'm always looking for that extra world building and actually basically kind of applying the otherworldly, in this case, kind of superhuman, their extra human abilities and how they apply that to kind of impact real world scenarios. That's kind of what I'm looking for in stories like this, where yes, it is about the character, but I also want to see how that character then interacts in the real world. So I actually really enjoyed season 2 and how they just expanded that world building so much and kind of introduced, interesting concepts. And that's what they did in this, where they were just kind of throwing out concepts at you,
left and right.
Yeah, like Hakuna Matata and stuff, without being really able to explain that. it's something I'm kind of used to in reading the fantasy genre. So I like, trying to figure it out. And yes, I wish they had kind of more time to establish that and set that up more. But at the same time, sometimes it's fun just to, throw out titles and, kind of leave a little mystery about them and, let you perceive how you will. It's also why I think the show didn't work as well in season 1, because I thought the pacing on that was a little slow. Where when I originally went in to watch it, in the beginning, I'm watching through episodes and the concepts and the ideas are interesting to me. But as the show switched from one episode to the other, they showed a scene where it showed a picture of them all together and kind of like interacting. And so I kept trying to like fast forward through these episodes, trying to get to that scene. And it didn't come until the very season finale of season 1. And that's a generality that happens in a lot of superhero fantasy shows like that, where characters spend a huge amount of time learning their power sets, and it really annoys the shit out of me because I just want to get to the good stuff. So overall, I think that if they somehow kind of melded the slower pace of the first season with the quicker pace of the second season and the finale, it might have made for an overall better quality show.
Yeah.
What jarred me the most about this is we have a whole lot of action and violence and ultra violence. Like there are like 20 people being killed in like a minute, which in the pace of the show, if we'd run this over 3 seasons, would be a little action pace every episode. But all at once, did it work for you? Was it a little jarring given everything? What do you think?
It's mostly what I expected. That was kind of one of the core features of the show. So it was just kind of like one of those check boxes that needed to happen in the finale, going over things that you're kind of expecting to see out of this. So, we have, the character moments, we have our action bits, we have at least one set dance, to music piece, and at least like one orgy scene. Those are kind of those are kind of, you had to include at least one of each of those in there. I don't think it was too much in the sense that kind of there was an action piece for each of kind of like the 3 main locations that they had. So it just kind of fit with that pacing within the story. Mm-hmm. I would say the one problem is that the final one in Naples was really starting to get past the suspension of disbelief.
Yeah, I was there too.
Yeah, it was a bit too much.
Everyone on the show has become an action hero.
Right. Like they can't dodge bullets. Like they still have basic human reflexes. The amount of like bullets and stuff they dodged got to be a little ridiculous. Yeah. I would say just also kind of a random thing I thought of, as I'm watching it, is that they're actually like strategically speaking, like it's actually better for them to be in smaller pairs because of kind of the way the gift works. Like in fact, it would it's almost more strategic for Sun just to like meditate in a safe spot and have her just jump into various people as needed and actually have the others be the people on the front line and Sun just take over a body as needed to fight.
The spirit of Van Damme.
Right, yeah. So, yeah, it's just kind of an odd thing where, having them all together got a little bit out there.
So we brought back almost everyone who's ever been on this show, right? I mean, every minor character almost makes an appearance. Did it work for you? Did it seem forced? Or were you just like, I'm happy, I'm okay with this? And how many of them did you actually remember?
I was happy and okay with this.
Yeah, I really liked that.
Yeah, I like that they brought everybody back. I was really happy with it. It was a little forced, but I'm not opposed to a little force. So it was good to me. So I liked it.
Okay.
Please take that quote out of context.
Exactly. Yeah. Bumper. We might have a bumper. How many of these characters did you remember? I don't even remember anyone from Riley's storyline that they brought back. I didn't remember any of those characters. There were so many characters. I was like, who is this? I have no idea who this is.
I don't necessarily remember their names in the show, but I remembered who they were. And the guy with the wigs, I was dying laughing because
I didn't remember it.
Oh, yeah.
I just could not handle that. Because I didn't realize that he was doing Riley's hair last season until he was wearing the wig that was resembling Sun. And I was like, Oh
Yep.
my god, it's been going on for 12 episodes.
I didn't catch it at all.
I had the same thing, yeah.
That was so funny.
Yeah, no, I remember faces, if not names. So, I at least recognized who the characters were and where they came from, although I just couldn't name anyone if you asked me to do trivia for it.
Right. I do have to say the best secondary characters are Daniela and...
Bug.
Oh, and Bug. Yeah, Bug.
And
Bug, Daniela. Oh my god, yeah.
I mean, are we counting Amanita as a secondary character?
He's in the opening credits. He's in the opening credits.
She's main character.
Right, I wouldn't...
She's a main.
Yeah, she's a main character. She's basically in the cluster.
Yeah. Once you've been on Doctor Who, you count in the opening credits. Although not Sylvester McCoy.
Yeah.
Let's go a little more into some of the specific plot points. What'd you think of the new Hakuna Matata group? Did you like them? Did you care? Did you want to see more?
Yeah, I was really intrigued by it, and I definitely would have wanted to see more and explored that. It was just beautiful too. Their little Hakuna Matata sanctuary was what a gorgeous set piece. I would have liked to see how that played out. One thing I found fascinating, it's not so much the BPO storyline, but it's everyone else. It's all the other homosensoriums out there in the world and meeting them and seeing how they function and why this cluster that we're following is so special. It's the contrast between our cluster that we're following in the show and how other clusters operate and things. So I was very intrigued. I was really glad that they showed us, here's kind of the idea we're going. And I was happy with it in this, and I would have surely been happy with it had the show been able to continue.
I think the Hakuna Matata could have been their own season in general, just because we got little snippets of information that I feel would have really helped with the world building or help understanding being a Sense8, because when the bald girl with the tattoo on her head, I don't remember her name, but when she came in...
Does anyone?
No, probably
Bodhi.
Yeah, when she came in, everyone was able to see her when they hadn't made eye contact with her. And they asked her about it, and she said, I don't have time to get into everything. Let's do whatever. And she took them over to see the mother. And then even the mother said something about how they're at a place in between realms or something I didn't really understand, and I feel like that could have been a season in of itself, learning more about the greater world of Homosensorium. So I think that it was necessary, but if we had a whole season on that, I would have just eaten that up because I love the world building aspect of it. I love figuring out more about this race of people that we had no idea of before. I really wish that they would have spent more time on that rather than just dusting over it.
I mean, yeah, I feel like they spent as much time on it as they could given their constraints. And yeah, it would have been fun to see, as I've already stated with my love of world building. And this one was particularly interesting, and it kind of harkens to other fantasy stories with basically courts of immortals, in terms of either vampire stories or other related stuff, where it kind of had that feel of just a higher court of a separate race of people. So it was very interesting, and also made sense given parallels I've seen with other stories.
Let's move story-wise on a little bit. We then got the big action sequence that was in Naples at the Forcella. Do we all agree it was a little ridiculous? I mean,
yes.
First of all, this convoluted story to how to get in there. We had this whole we're on a tour bus. Admittedly, it was hysterical, so I kind of liked it.
Right. They were way too close to that explosion, though. Holy shit.
Yeah. Talk about, close call. Holy crap.
All the action in that scene was just absurd. After all the other stuff we'd already seen, it was just okay, come on. Really? But at the same point, I got to admit, I didn't give a fuck. I was you know what? This is fun.
Right.
We're getting to where we need to be. I'm okay with it.
I agree with you 100%.
Yeah. Same. That could be said about the whole episode. Basically, stuff would feel too quick, or just why are we hearing about the Hakuna Matata just for 5 seconds and then it's over, and the action is the same way. It's all too much. But I was just happy. And you're right, the bus thing was hilarious.
Right? It was silly, and, who cares? And it gave Nando something to do.
Yeah.
So in the middle of this, though, we got the big moment. We got Kala's death here, or lack thereof. So, first of all, were you expecting all the Sense8s to survive this?
Yes.
On most shows, you wouldn't, but with this, we wanted it. Were you expecting it?
Yeah, I was.
As ridiculous as that scene was, I was. Like, maybe we could have lost a minor character, but I wasn't expecting any of the Sense8s to die.
Yeah, no. I kind of tried to think about which one I would feel less sad about during the episode. Like, if one of them has to die, who would I want it to be? But then I was like, no.
None of them. Right.
I just think that out of any of the Sense8 that I thought could have died, Kala was the last one, on the list. She was so far removed from any of the action or any of the violence. To have her get shot at the end was kind of just like a shot to the heart for me. I was just like,
oh, yeah.
Out of everybody, I didn't think it was going to be her. I thought maybe Wolf King, maybe Sun, maybe Will, someone, but not Kala.
I know. Wolfgang, with all his violence, would have made the most sense. So here's the real question, though.
Wolfgang is bulletproof, obviously.
Right.
The problem was, you couldn't make the episode about rescuing him and then have him
kill him,
then have him die. Yeah. It's the same thing of what Felix said back in season 2, where it's just like, come on, man, I can't get shot again. That'd be ridiculous.
Right.
Of course,
And then he did.
Right. Yeah,
he's one of the few.
But he still survived it. Then they went the other way with the joke.
So when this moment happened and she shot, I didn't believe it up until that moment. But once it happened, did you fall for it? Did you think she was dead? Did you cry? I was totally swept up in it. I was at first like, no, they can't do this. And then was like, you know what? We wrapped up the whole threesome storyline, which we'll get to later in the character arcs. So it kind of makes sense that now you kill her. She is, at this point now, the heart of the story, at least for this episode, that I totally bought it. I was bawling my eyes out and was, oh my God, I couldn't believe it, but it made total sense to me in that moment. What about the rest of you? Did you buy it? Were you conned?
I bought it 100%. The exact opposite of what Matt is going to say, but I was gagged 100%. I couldn't handle it. I felt the same way about when Sun was getting hung in the prison. I think that was season 1, where I just couldn't breathe watching it. I was so stunned as to what was happening. And of course, my husband's not super into the show, so he's sitting next to me and I'm just like freaking out. He's like, what is going on with you?
I didn't. And it goes back to, going back to the checklist where it's just what I was expecting with the finale. I wasn't expecting anyone to die, even with the ridiculousness, mainly just because the main theme of the story has always been hope. So I figured that you just need to have a happy ending. Otherwise, the fans would be too upset about it. And in the moment, all I was thinking was like, all right, get the fuck on with it. Like, she's not dead yet. Like, especially because it was a gut shot. I was just like, what are you all doing? You're smarter than this. Like, at least try to do some stuff to save her. So I was just kind of waiting for them to get on with it. And then they finally did.
And this was funny. I'm just like, well, are you going to do something?
Right, yeah.
Right. Yeah, I was really relieved when we saw her come back, and then I realized, like, okay, she's still here. But I did think it was one of those Hollywood movie endings of you get shot and all of a sudden you fall to the floor and take your last breath, and it happens in 10 seconds. So I bought it, hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah, same as James and you. Yeah.
It's the emotional moment of the show, I think. It was the one moment that had all of us gasping one way or another. Oh, no. So Hannah has to be muted for a moment, but she wanted to make sure we all know that she thought if they were going to kill one of them, it would have been Capheus. But when that happened, she had a red wedding flashback and was like, holy shit, are they really killing her? Given the actor change and the fact that they kind of wrapped up most of the story, she mostly thought that Capheus would have been done, but she was totally red wedding.
Jock, that's hilarious. Whisper Sense's regards.
Yeah, I do agree. If they were going to kill one, it probably would have been Capheus.
If they had actually gone through with it with Kala, that would have been the most devastating thing ever. I would have been so upset. But yet at the same time, it kind of made sense. The reason I bought it was because they'd made her such the emotional center of this episode that to kill her was the worst gut punch you could ever have. We'd have a happy ending later, but it would have been like so bittersweet that
it would have that ending would have had a lot different feel about it if she wasn't there, and I think it would have been for the worse, just because the last 20 minutes or what, we'll get to it, but they're what make the episode and why you can forgive the first 2 hours for its various flaws, because that last half hour was so good.
What made me believe it was that they kind of wrapped up that whole threesome trilogy story early, which was a little early in the episode. So I thought, well, if they wrapped it up, maybe this is the end of her story. She dies. And I was devastated. I was just bawling for like 5 minutes. But at the same time, when you saw her walk out, was it a little cliche? Was it a little corny? Was it a little, they're not going to do this. But how happy were you when you saw it? Like, right?
Yeah.
And I love that the two of them together got to save her.
Yeah, that was nice.
With Rajan using a little electro gun that we saw earlier to save her, his smarts getting to do something. Like, it's one thing we'll talk later. I love the little moments that they gave even the minor characters to contribute to the storyline. And Rajan effectively gets to save his wife with his smarts, which I love.
Yeah, actually, that was kind of one of the surprises, was the interaction between Wolfgang and Rajan. That was something I wasn't expecting at all going into this episode, and they did a really good job with it. And and overall, kind of the solution to that storyline is one I didn't see coming because I wasn't looking at it in the proper lens.
Right.
Where I'm just so used to she has to choose one, and it just never fucking occurred to me. They could just be like, no. Fuck it, we're doing both. And I thought it was one of kind of like the major surprises for me in a finale where, I was hoping and expecting most of the things that occurred. So I really wanted to point that out as a well done moment.
Yeah. Do you think they would have done it this way if they had time?
They would have dragged it out more.
They dragged it out,
yeah.
But that would be the ending still.
Yeah, I think it would have been the same ending. And I think it worked with the characters as well, because Rajan never really seemed like the this woman is mine type guy. He was always really good with whatever Kala wanted because he was so in love with her. So whatever's going on with her, he's still going to love her. And I got the same sense from Wolfgang, where he never really felt possessive over one person. So to be able to share her and both love her equally, I thought was good. And I think it also brings to light the idea of polyamory, or having multiple partners. I think that it worked. It fit the show. Let's
save a little of this conversation for when we get to the characters, because that's kind of probably most of what we're going to talk about with these characters. So let's get to that in a moment. We did get a big music scene. We had to have the big everyone singing together. And for this one, they chose Depeche Mode, I Feel You. This kind of helped me highlight how much music has been a part of this show, not only with the scenes where they sing together, but just other moments. There's a moment where a trance act I like, Above and Beyond, sings while they're sitting on the roofs talking. There's been moments all through the series, and how music is so key to this show, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, I agree. I think the music was really important. For me, music ties in all sorts of different emotions too, so it helped me feel more for the characters. From starting out with the What's Up all the way up until the ending, the music was vital to the series.
Yeah, for me, it's similar to shows like Westworld, and also going back a little bit, the L Word as well, which put a lot of effort into their music choices and really kind of became an important aspect of each of those shows, where it was equally as important as a character and setting.
Yeah. I mean, will you ever listen to What's Up and not think this show ever in your life again? Never.
Probably not. That particular scene also, it's kind of hidden underneath it, but it brought out an interesting aspect in how the Sense8 thing all works, where it's pretty awesome that you can just have one of your Senseis just kind of have a running soundtrack, to give you like a backing soundtrack whenever you want it.
Right.
And it goes into the fact that, Riley's a DJ. And so you could it's just like whenever it's like, man, I really need some pump up music right now. Like, Riley, hit me up. Like,
right. I want to know how they managed to get it in the car. Was it Bluetooth?
I thought about that too. At first, I was thinking maybe Riley was on some kind of satellite radio that they knew about, and so they jumped on that same channel.
They showed, they did show them turning up the radio in the car, but they didn't exactly explain how they were all connected with the various radios for the character. Characters who couldn't
Who
hear.
cares?
Right.
Exactly.
Who cares?
But we're nerds, of course we care.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, actually, Hannah is still writing and not talking. And she's saying she really enjoyed that they took the time to have them share music this way, even though they had a lot to say in 2.5 hours. And I completely agree. And I agree that it's an immense part of the show. And it's the moments I remember the most, you know, the WhatsApp moment, the bit of fifth concerto in season 1. Music is so important and it's so linked to how we are feeling. At least for me, like music is the main way I'm feeling stuff. So yeah, good job.
Yeah, I love they just made that so integral to this show.
Yeah.
And I think that leads to my next point, which is kind of how in a show that had to wrap up 3 seasons of stories in 2.5 hours, we still took the time to have these huge character, not just moments, but like 15 minutes. We had all that time in between Paris and Italy where we get to know these characters and they celebrate with champagne and Rajan comes in and they deal with all of that. And then I was amazed that the main storyline was over. All the BPO stuff was over almost a half hour before the end of it. And that they gave us 20 minutes of a wedding and then 10 minutes of an orgy sex scene, which we'll talk about. And I mean, it was great that they gave us the time to have this. Let's move on to the wedding a little bit. What a great way to end this show. We had Nomi and Amanita giving their vows. Everyone in the entire family of cluster families coming together, and of all places, the freaking Eiffel Tower, to come together and celebrate everything the show's about. I can't think of a better way to end this show, right?
100%.
Yeah, definitely not. Yeah, it's easily up there with all the other great finales I've seen with that final 30 minutes.
It's interesting that a lot of shows have been doing that lately, where we have shows that have to try to wrap up stuff maybe a little quicker than they should, but still take 15, 20, 30 minutes to really, let's do what we're here for. Let's talk about these people, these characters that you've grown to love. I don't know how many of you have watched 12 Monkeys. They spent a good half hour dealing with these characters at the end. Orphan Black was another show that wrapped up recently that where we really got to know these characters at the end. We gave them all a fitting farewell. And I'm loving that the producers of these shows and the networks are allowing us to really say goodbye to these characters instead of just fight, shoot. Okay, goodbye.
Yeah, I think that last point is kind of the key, is why you're seeing more of these days. And especially it's also because we're moving away from the basic cable stuff, whereas later networks and streaming services are more willing to let shows kind of have their finishing moment and also give them like a heads up. Like we're seeing a lot more shows being renewed for officially declared final seasons. Yeah. So that they have a plan to start with to then end the show without trying to write a finale that's both could possibly be a series finale as well as lead into another season if they get renewed. So I like that trend and how it's moving towards that more.
Yeah, definitely. It's nice when they know where they're going and are able to go there instead of just in case.
Yeah, I was really happy with being able to say goodbye to the characters the way that we did. I would say not every character, but a lot of the characters kind of wrapped up their arc. I was definitely happy with the way that this was handled. The thing that I think in contrast is the way True Blood ended was so terrible, and that was one of my favorite shows for so long. But the fact that they spent 5 minutes at the end and didn't even show the guy who Suki got married to and she has a kid. Like, that was the worst ending of the show. And so now every time I go into any series, I'm just like, why am I going to invest so much time if the ending's going to be shitty? So the fact that shows are getting into this gives me, a new life when it comes to completing a series.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes it all feel worthwhile. Because, I mean, I think it's interesting. The things we care about and the things that producers, directors, networks care about is so different. We grow to love these characters. This show more than probably any other show I've ever watched. This is about the characters. I don't even care about the main story. I don't care who dies, who wins, who whatever. But I want to know what happens with Kala. I want to know if Nomi and Amanita are happy. I want to know what happens with all these people. And they're starting to recognize that, and I love that. I love it.
Yeah, I think it's important with shows like this where the acting and the writing is really strong, because those are the shows that you really get into the characters rather than the storyline. This show is kind of unique to anything else that I've really been watching lately, in the sense that I just really fell in love with every single character.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep. And I mean, we got so many great character moments during this wedding, which was great. We'll talk a little more in the characters, but it was just so good. The best part that we had fireworks that were paid for by Paris and the new BPO, by the way. Did you catch that little moment?
Yeah.
The new BPO pays for the fireworks. Kind of a little joke maybe on Netflix, paying for it. I don't know. And we got one last big dance moment during the Nothing Matters While We're Dancing, which was a special remix they made just for the show, by the way. So if you want to find that song, sorry, guys, doesn't exist elsewhere. You can't get it. But it was a great moment because we went from this nice, sweet little quiet moment into this big, high-energy dance track that everyone got into. What a great way to end. Until, of course, the big orgy, which we're getting to next.
Yeah, the actual ending.
So we have the inevitable orgy scene. Okay. Was that the inevitable way to end the show, do you think? Or
obviously we knew there was going to be one. And so it's just kind of, it's just kind of like, well, we're getting to the end here, so this has got to be it.
Yeah.
And I think it ended up really working. I don't know about anyone else, but I think it's the best sex scene ever filmed, ever.
Right.
Period.
I agree, like 150%.
Period, full stop.
Yeah.
And we go back to the music aspect where the song they chose and how they incorporated it was something else, man. And as you get just with everything with the slow build and then eventually the pace quickens and to a point where they're cutting with every stroke of the violin string.
Yeah.
And then to slow it down and then finally with kind of the big, let's say, climax at the end. Where it goes from just flashing between the individual pairings to then the full group all on the one bed together. And it's just incredible.
Yeah, and just to the way that it was shot, a lot of sex scenes, I'm sure other people feel the same way. Sometimes you're watching it, you feel slightly uncomfortable, like I don't really know if I'm supposed to enjoy this as much as I do. And this didn't give me that feeling. It felt different, I would say. I don't know if it's the incorporation of the music or the way that it was shot going from cut to cut, but it was good. And then the entire crescendo up until when Rajan and Wolfgang started kissing, and then I feel like the beat dropped and everything just came right back. It was shot so perfect. Again, my husband doesn't even really watch the show, but after it was over, I rewinded it and I was like, just please watch this. This is why I have the show. I've never been, you've never been on the edge of your seat for a fucking sex scene.
For an orgy.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. And
I was just sitting there, mouth agape, man, watching this thing.
Right.
Watching it, especially the second time watching it, that music, though, was so perfect. That violin music, those increasing tempos, like you said, and the crescendo. The music just made it work so well. And I also loved, at the beginning of it, the flashbacks to
that's the other thing.
Yeah.
They showed what each of them meant. Yeah.
Talk about the feels, giving you the feels. Every single flashback moment, I was just like, oh. Oh yeah, remember that. Oh.
The orgy scenes throughout the series, I find it beautiful, but as you can expect, it can also be slightly uncomfortable. So I was just mentioning this finale on Facebook, and my father was like, don't spoil anything. I just started watching season 1, and I was like, oh no, oh please no, oh god no.
That's funny.
We could talk about anything, but we're not going to talk about Sense8 with our parents.
Nope.
And I think that's the great thing about this show is we're all uncomfortable with some aspect of this show. Let's be honest. As much as we try to be cool, some aspect of it makes all of us uncomfortable, but they've managed to make it beautiful. And I think that's one of the great things we see, especially in this scene. We get to know characters from around the world we can care about because we all share the same loves and desires and maybe some different ones too, and that's okay. It was just such a perfect moment. Is there really any other way you could have ended this show?
No, it was
No,
perfect.
I don't think so. And up until the final line, which you have quoted down in the show notes, great final line, and then the shot of the pride dildo, and there you go.
We had Rajan saying, I didn't think such things were possible, and College just goes, shh. And then we pan back to the rainbow dildo, and then for our fans.
Right.
Yeah, okay. In any other circumstance, that would have been a complete fuck you, you know what I mean? But a wet dildo on the floor in Sense8 is actually moment, and love it. Yeah, and in any other thing, that would be so, like, disgusting and out of place, and it's not. And I love how they recognize that specific thing is one thing that drew me into the show, is just, holy shit, they went there, and I didn't hate it. I don't feel cringy about this. Why? So I kept watching, you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, I think there's something, like I said before, something unique to this show where the sex scenes don't make me feel weird, which a lot of sex scenes do in normal shows. They do it so right.
Because it's not just sex, it's about passion, it's about love, it's about connection, it's about all those things that we love that draw us to the show. You know, if anything, the sex scenes are the natural outcome from what we expect and from what we've come to love about this, as opposed to thrown in to be gratuitous or to shock or to get you to feel things. Like, it automatically does make us feel things because they've done their homework and done the build up to make it work.
Yeah, 100%.
So let's move on to the characters. Some of these we'll probably go through quickly because some of them didn't get much to do in this. Others we'll probably spend a little more time on. But let's start with our bad guy, Whispers. How nasty was he? And was it just delicious? He's so... in a good way. Of all the, like, villains of this show, he's the only one I find even remotely interesting.
I definitely hated Whispers the entire time, but the only thing that I was hoping for, which I don't think we really got, was a moment where we broke him emotionally. And even bringing up the divorce, you could tell it did something to him, but I just wanted to see a breakdown, and we didn't get that.
But maybe that fits the character.
Yeah, I don't think it would fit the character just because, as they explained, you know, he killed his other 7 members while experiencing their pain while dying. You can't pull that off with just completely cutting off your humanity, so I don't think it would make sense for him to ever really break down.
Yeah, that makes sense. You can't have a sociopath feel those kind of emotions.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Would be nice.
So yeah, the only thing you could have done it would be to torture him, but that's not what the show is about.
Yeah. Or blow him up in a helicopter.
There.
Right, yeah. So they just made it quick and simple.
Right? And we did get some nice backstory on him. We got the whole divorce and him being so confident, but yet a little shaken. And that worked for me. I was okay with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to say about Whispers?
No, let him die.
Right? Does anyone want to say anything about Jonas and Angelica, their backstory? We got a lot more of what she was up to and what he's been up to. Did you get it? Did you understand it? Did you care?
I'm still confused.
Yep.
It
I kind of
was
didn't
quite
give a shit.
convoluted. Yeah. I was really invested in Jonas' character in season 1. He was interesting to me. And then I kind of lost him. And it was just, is he with us or against us? Or what the fuck is he doing?
Which is what I think
was
they were
kind
going
of
for.
lost. Yeah,
think
of
they were going for
course.
that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I just think this finale caught him in a weird part of his story arc where
Yeah.
it was hard to make us love him again and then have him die, which is what they tried to do, but it just didn't pay off
yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
for him.
Do you think his death was inevitable? I mean, I felt like someone big
Yeah.
had to die in this, and it made total sense for it to be him. Like, I did not expect him to survive it at all. If anyone was going to die, it was going to be him, I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah, no, it made sense for his character, and I liked the way he went out, but, you know, I didn't really have any strong emotions about it as I did with some of the other moments.
Right.
Yeah. He ended up kind of being like a weenie.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, no one cried when he died, right?
No.
No.
Nope.
Not like Kyle.
No, and I love that actor. He's great, but Naveen Andrews, he's amazing, but
Yeah, that's correct.
just whatever, you know, like I don't care.
I think he did all he could with what he got.
Yeah, it's like they had to keep recycling Daryl Hannah's character, Angelica, you know, a lot. To me, it seemed like a lot of the same beats we had already hit. And so I do wonder if, had we been able to see like the Lacuna thing play out, is maybe she would have had more, like, is there a fresh revelation that could come from that? Because they never explained, like, we're on, like, a different plane, you know what I mean? Like, I was half expecting her to, like, be there, or, like, walk up out of there with them. Yeah, you know, so,
for her to transcend like a Jedi, that would be interesting, I suppose.
yeah, but because it didn't, unfold in anything that was like revelatory for me. I could have done without, but yeah.
Yeah, they were trying to give her backstory and what she did and what she had planned, all that. And the first time I watched it, I didn't catch most of it. I didn't really understand it all. Even after having read the summary, which described what happened, and watching it again, I still was kind of like, what's going on here? And honestly, just didn't care that much, personally.
Yeah.
Right.
I was already kind of burned out with her, you know, when she was in the redwood forest singing to the trees or whatever the fuck.
Yep.
Yeah.
So slow to me that I just kind of was already winding down on her anyway. So,
although it's interesting that her spirit somehow popped up at the wedding, but Jonas's didn't. I thought that was interesting.
Oh well, it's just because
their mother.
Yeah, it's because she's their mother.
Yeah.
Jonas was able to see his father in the train station, so I think it makes sense that we got to see Angelica again.
Mm-hmm.
Let's move on. I'm going in order of how much time we spent with these characters and how much we got. So we'll start with Capheus, who got almost no time in this other than driving buses and vans around.
Yeah.
Did anything happen in his story? He was in the middle of an election, and we had a moment where, what's-her-name says, oh, they're using this in the election against you. And then we never heard another thing about it. Did I miss something, or did anything happen there?
No, nothing happened with it, because it wasn't related to the ongoing story. I mean, there wasn't that much, advancement of the characters' individual stories back in the places they were from.
Except for Sun.
But everyone else got somewhat of a wrap-up. I mean, in his case...
Well,
they were...
not necessarily.
He only...
I don't think Leto, his personal story of being an actor, just didn't really show up in the finale. But it's sad that when we don't see Capheus in his own story, he has really not much to do, and that's sad.
I mean, realistically, all last season, he had, 2 main storylines. He was into what's-her-name, and he was running for office. And we got nothing other than a sentence of the running for office, but at least he gets the girls, so I guess, there's that.
Right. So, my overall point is, all those old storylines kind of back in their individual locations, they didn't really talk about any of them. Really, the only character stuff they were focusing on was kind of the few people who were still in uncertain relationship statuses. They had to settle that together, and that was really kind of the only character development we got, which is fine because we've had 2 seasons of it. We just wanted, a happy ending wrap up.
Oh, it's one reason, I feel like he would have been the obvious choice to kill off just because his story was always so, I feel, standalone to everyone else, if that makes sense. Honestly, his whole shit could have been its own show. And I would have loved that show as well. The intricacies and the dynamics in Nairobi and the big gap in income and stuff. I mean, I would still love to explore those themes, but it always seemed like it was definitely removed from everyone else. I mean, I guess you could make the argument that everyone's is removed, but they kind of tie in a way that makes a lot more impact on the larger show arc where Capheus doesn't necessarily.
Yeah, I think it's also because the others' individual stories, they're interesting and they're great to follow, and they didn't wrap them up either, but they still gave these characters great moments in the finale. And I guess Capheus wasn't that much...
he drives cars and buses, that's all he got to do.
Yeah, I guess
that's his thing.
It was interesting to follow him because of his situations, but when he's taken out of those situations and just with everyone else, he's not that interesting, I guess. They didn't build enough about him so that we would really want to see him interact with the others.
I had a hard time connecting with the new actor that played him after season 1. The whole Becky on Roseanne thing, it never really gave me that intimate feeling that I had with some of the other characters or the original Capheus. And obviously that happened at a pretty pivotal moment in his story. So it was just, kind of weird. I felt like that was hard to connect with, but at the same time, that actor is also amazing, and he seems like a really wonderful person. One thing that touched me a lot at the end was him introducing the spirit of Van Damme.
Yes.
I love that. That was
that was
a payoff I really wanted to see, and I loved that. But yeah, I think that's why I said, like, yes, I'd love to see how his political career pays off, and I would love to see, like, Caffey Saves the World. Like, if we want to do a spinoff, that would be fucking amazing, you know? But as far as the cramming everything into this short time, I felt like we had other ground we could cover, and he'd had a lot of his loose ends tied up. And Leto, too, in a lot of ways. And I love Leto, but he had addressed a lot of his, quote, real-life issues where he came out and he's getting rewarded for it because he's going to go to America and he's going to do this. So it's not necessary to see that. The other characters had more pressing things, I think, that they needed to situate, and mainly Kala, Wolfgang, and Sun. They had things that needed to be.
I guess the thing for me is that all these characters had storylines going, right? But I don't feel like anyone else was left on a major, like, cliffhanger character-wise. We'd get at least some wrap-up of all their stories. I mean, yeah, Leto's going to go on and become an actor. What's going to happen with that? But, I mean, he's in a better place. We've got kind of an end. He's moving on. Yeah. I feel like Capheus is in the middle of an election. That's kind of the whole point of his story arc right now, is he's moving on to become like a leader, and we don't get to see how it ends. I don't think there's any other character where I'm leaving this going, what's going to happen next? Like, I know Nomi and Amanita are going to be happy. I know that Kala, Wolfgang, and Rajan are going to figure something out, or maybe they won't, but we got at least a sort of ending to their story. All the other characters, we got that. And with Capheus, we just kind of got he got the girl, so that's really all that matters, which that kind of bothered.
Got his mom. He made peace with Mr. The fuck's his
Kabaka.
Kabaka.
Is that it? Yeah.
I have no idea, but yeah.
Right, exactly.
It seems like he brought him back from the dark side, and instead of being a gangster, he's going to try to fight for the equality and help Capheus and use his money and notoriety for the good now. I can fill in that blank pretty easily. So to me, it's not as big of a cliffhanger as the fact that I'm shipping Daniela and Diego, and what I need to see them find love.
Oh my goodness.
She can't just be Leto pinch hitter forever, you know what I mean? Like she
can't just be like the voyeur. Yeah.
She needs to hook up with Diego. That was like the one thing that I kept like sitting there in the Eiffel Tower, like, have them look at each other from across the room. Have them connect. Have them connect. God damn it, no!
That would have been hot. That would have been hot.
And I never realized I was shipping that so hard until like right there at the end. I'm like, oh fuck, that's perfect. You know?
Speaking of Diego, let's move on to Riley and Will. I'm kind of putting them together because their stories got kind of mixed up here together. I don't have much to say about either of them in this episode. Do any of you?
No, they were already wrapped pretty much, right. I think.
Yeah. We got a little reunions, but
mom and dad are fine, you know.
Season 2, we spent so much time on their storyline that I didn't think that this finale really needed too much. We didn't need to open up any new drama with them. We just had to have them be happy and be part of the story, which was what they did their thing.
And survive all the bullshit.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing about this show, too, is like one could argue like, oh, they're the main characters, and kind of Nomi and Amanita are like, I would say they're the main 4, right? But that's silly because they're all the main.
I never gave a shit about either of them, to be honest. I'll be honest.
Oh, no.
And I'm a dance music fan, so I should love Riley. And in fact, she played one of my favorite acts, Above and Beyond, in one of her things, and Dash Berlin in another episode. But I just never found either of their stories all that interesting, personally.
Oh, her whole story with her baby, and I mean, that was
a little bit
heartbreaking. And insane. Right. But it's nice that if the show had been able to continue, we would have seen we're going to take these two people will be in the foreground for this season, and they're going to take a more supportive role, and then these people are going to come up and be the leading roles. You know what I mean? I think that it had that fluid dynamics that it could have continued to play with, and I just think that's what we're seeing here in the finale is they had been the leading and driving forces, and now they're kind of good for now, so they're going to take a step back and just be there as supportive characters more.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I love them, and I love them from the beginning, so I'm happy they're together and happy. But I wanted to say about Riley's supporting characters, I really like Sylvester McCoy, Mr. Hoy.
Yes.
And I actually, that was cheesy too. Like, he should have died, realistically.
I mean,
what does realistically mean? But
I mean, they winked at the camera.
Maybe he regenerated like the Doctor.
Well, I mean, he mentioned it. It was a quick little line during the wedding, but they said something about how the lady came in guns blazing, and I wouldn't have believed it too if it was on TV. You know, they made a joke about it, which I appreciated. Again, it's fan service. Everybody liked him.
Yeah, I'm actually really happy he survived, because I was like, oh no, that's so sad. Like he was about to just be discovered and just kill himself, and that was terrible. So I'm happy he survived, but it
wasn't.
I mean, yeah, to be fair, he should have died.
During that scene when he's running up the stairs the whole time, I was thinking, like, you should have never left your shoe box. That was such a safe little box. You should have never left it.
Yeah.
I love her dad. My God, I love her dad so much.
Yeah. And that's always a nice touch, like having playing piano at the wedding and stuff.
Yeah. And getting high as fuck.
Oh, yeah. As far as Will goes, I liked him. I think because he's from Chicago and I'm from Chicago during season 1. It was nice to see, like, oh, I know where that is, or I know what a Chicago cop looks like. I've had run-ins with them.
Right.
It was nice to be able to have that, but other than that, after he left Chicago, I was kind of not so invested in what was going on with them.
Yeah. It's one of the great things about the show is all the sites from around the world. Like, I've traveled. I went to Mexico City last year, so when I'm watching the opening credits, I'm like, oh, wait, there's the angel. Oh, there's the, that's always fun about this show. All the sites from around the world. So let's move on to Lito, Hernando, and Daniela, who were definitely my favorites on this show. There wasn't a lot for them to do here, but there's actually a good reason for this. I don't know if you know this, but Alfonso Herrera, who plays Hernando, was busy filming something else. So they had to try to fly him in and squeeze him into the filming during the free time. So I'm guessing that they cut those storylines down a bit. He still got a lot to do, I think. They even used a lookalike in some scenes from the back. In fact, I don't know if you cut during the orgy, there was a moment where you saw him and I was like, that is not him. So I know that chest, that's not him.
David has that chest memorized.
Oh, yes.
David had those scenes on pause. It was wearing out his...
Funny side story, when I was in Mexico City last year, I actually hooked up with a guy who kind of looked like him. And but in my mind, the entire time I was channeling Hernando. I was like, this is Nando. I'm with Nando right now. I'm happy as I can get. As a character, I would marry that man in a second. He's like the perfect man. Hernando, he's like husband. He's perfect. So to their stories.
I mean, you could talk about Daniela's big moment in a second here. Kind of one small thing I enjoyed was kind of early on. It was both Hernando and Nomi who were the ones who came back and saved their significant others when they were first discovered. It was just a fun moment, both, especially Amanita's like, oh, I've been waiting to see this forever. Like,
that was so good.
For them to be able to see them fight like that. So that was a fun moment with those
I like
two.
that Bug got to meet him. That was cool, cute too, Like a big thing.
Yeah,
that was pretty fun.
Going back to what Matt said about that scene where they ran in to save their loved ones, you could tell even at the end, Nomi was shocked as to what she did. Her face was just like, oh my God, did you see that? Amanita and Nomi were just so removed from the actual action, but they always were a part of it, through audio or whatever. So the fact that they were able to see it firsthand, I loved that. That was hilarious.
Let's face it, Daniela was one of the stars of this. She didn't get a lot to do, but when she did, it was fabulous. I love the moment just before she goes in to meet Whispers, when they're talking about we need someone with a gun, and she grabs the gun and goes, yeah, I know how to use this because of Joaquin. Like, I love that. And then when she gets to confront Whispers, what a great moment. The story of an abused character confronting another abuser and standing up and saying, like, you're nothing. I know your type. You're nothing. Yeah. That was just amazing. That is honestly, I think, my favorite moment in the entire episode. Just so incredible. For this minor character to just steal our hearts the way she did is just amazing.
I also love that it's a Homo sapien risking her life for a Homo sensorium and showing the beauty and the power of Homo sapiens to love and not be lesser beings. And I think that just that one little line packs an amazing punch and is very loaded with multiple layers of dynamics. And resounding, profound statements all in just one little line.
Yeah.
That was a very touching moment, you know. Not just her like taking back her sense of security, and taking a stand, but taking a stand for her race and their race against people like that and things like, God, what a world we would live in if more people were like that. You know?
Right. The way they wrote it is so well. I'm going to repeat it just because it was so good. Whispers goes, I never forget a face. And she goes, I see you too. And I know your mind. Men that mistake cruelty for strength, living your petty little lives so limited. We both know that if I were to pull this trigger, not a single person would shed a tear. The smallness of your kind of life is nothing to fear, only to pity. I mean, it just rips him to shreds because he's playing we're the fabulous people and you're just so little. You know, you're the pet. And meanwhile, she's saying, no, you're the useless. You're the unimportant one. And
you're the one that has no place here, not me.
Right. It's perfect. It's so perfect.
I think the dialogue in this scene is really strong, but even the way that she acted it when she put the gun underneath his chin while she's talking, her face is so
casual.
Unmoved. And then I love the scene when she puts her heel up on his wrist and he opens his hand with that syringe in there. That was just so female power for me, which I am 100% behind, that I just loved that. That was such a good scene. She acted it so well.
Yeah. One of my favorite things from season 2 was her bit on the phone to get him that audition. Like,
Yep.
Here we are in the middle of all this chaos, and we stopped for that, and it was just fucking genius. I've always just loved her, and I identify with her a lot because I don't know if it's weird. This show makes me feel like it's not weird, but I have a fetish with homosexuality. You know, it's sexy to me, and I just got it with her right away, and it felt so nice to. Oh, like I'm into that too, you know what I mean? So I'm not the one, you know.
I love that they turned the like somewhat like dirty, negative, like fag hag stereotype into such an empowering, positive role model. I love it. Because in our culture, it's somewhat of a negative thing, like, oh, they just obsess over gay men and it's dirty. And they've turned her into like, I think, one of the most positive characters in the show. I love her.
Yeah, and I feel like that concept that you were talking about before, it's evolving. It's something that is evolving, so I was glad the show was able to take it in that way, where, you know, she's really into hanging out with these two gay guys. She was so excited when she found out that Lita was gay.
I love that moment.
Because, you know, it was something like, she was into him sexually, but the moment she found out he was gay, it was almost like she loved him even more than she did. I really liked it, and I also liked at the end, if you saw during the big orgy scene, it seemed like...
She jumps in. She gets brought into it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, which I
was
liked.
Like, she got a happy ending too, in a little way.
In both senses of the word, she got her happy ending. But it also showed like how sexuality is not black and white. You know, I don't think Leto and Hernando are strictly gay. They're not all the way on that side of the Kinsley scale. So to have them kind of meet in the middle and show it was more about the people rather than their genitalia was important to me.
I think it was either Lana or Lily said that in her mind, they're all pansexual.
Oh, well, yeah, definitely. But yeah, definitely.
You know, and
by this episode, they've all kind of hit that mark.
Yeah. I think, like, they can't not be, though, either, because...
it's impossible to live like that and not be.
Right.
Yeah, when they were first born and having sexual experiences, they still hadn't even realized what the fuck was going on. And we were already getting the orgy scenes pretty early. And, you know, it's like when Will and Leto actually, like, meet for the first time. He's like, we had sex.
One of my favorite lines in the show.
We had sex at one time in our minds. Like,
Will's like, I know you. And Leto's like, yeah, we had sex. He just
but yeah, it's just, you can't not be, I think, into it all after an experience like that. And I love the fact, again, like this show makes it not only okay, but beautiful. And
well, that's the thing. It's not just sex. It's not about body parts and that. It's about our souls and spirits coming together in love for each other. And I think that's, you know, one of the fundamental messages of this show. And in no other like characters, I think, does that come out as much as here with these three characters. Does Leto want to fuck Daniela? No. But do they love each other deeply and passionately in a different kind of passion? Absolutely. And I think that's what's so great about this storyline is that these are people who care about each other so passionately, and whatever else happens is just a little fun extra.
And she really is a piece of the cluster, just like Anita, you know. So I think it's important for her to be brought in at the end that way, because I wasn't sure if they were trying to say that she was physically going to be with them now, or just representing like even the extended members of the family are just as connected to us and just as intimate with all of us and important to us.
Mm-hmm.
What they were trying to convey, at least in my opinion, was just that she is, like you guys said, a member of the overall cluster. You know, they didn't include Capheus's friend Jala in the ending orgy or anyone else that was like kind of a more satellite character. But because Daniela was so central to the story and important to the cluster, I think they included her in that ending scene. And to be honest, they're kind of a throuple anyways. Fernando, Daniela, and Leto are a throuple. It might not be strictly sexual, but to me, I think they care more about what's between their ears than what's between their legs. You know, they're into each other intellectually and then can express that sexually, which I think is important.
I think in the future, someday she's going to find love with some guy, and they're probably not going to keep fucking, but they're going to be very close for the rest of their lives. And that's where they should be.
She's going to fall in love with Diego, like Hannah said.
Maybe. Let's hope. Let's hope. And then we can have just orgies all the time. But let's move on to San and Detective Mun. So we already had a lot of her storyline somewhat wrapped up in the season finale for season 2. So I think we didn't get too much of her story. In fact, some of the wrap up happens off camera when we get some news reports about what's going on with her brother and the company and all that. But of course, we had to have our reunion. And if there was anyone you shipped on this show, did you not ship the two of them? Come on.
They were great, and numerous moments too. You know, like I could do this all day with you, Miss Bach.
Right.
Yeah, like them fighting together, her introducing him to a dog.
That was the sweetest moment.
Right? Yeah. It's like I met her family, and it's just the dog. Like it's great.
Yep. Because that's all that's left that matters to her.
Yeah. And then her basically allowing him to like track her through the cell phone. Just all sweet moments.
You knew she knew. She knew. She planned it.
Yeah.
Nobody warned her and she left it in. Was it a little corny, the reunion, or were you totally cool with it? I was.
No, I was
cool
with it.
That's the general theme of the show. Like, it's a little corny, but they make it work in a beautiful way. The
one moment I got a little pulled out of it was the actual reunion when she's being chased by BPO and the cops, and they together, of course, even though everyone has guns, somehow manage with their kung fu, karate, etc., to like beat up everyone, which is fine. A little corny, but yeah, whatever. Then they're standing in front of the carousel and they stop and flirt for like 3, 4, 5 minutes.
Correct. Yeah.
With like all the
run.
Right, run. Like, let's kiss soon. Like, but you know, it still worked. I was okay with it, but I was a little pulled out of it at that moment, going,
Yeah, same.
Maybe this isn't the moment to kiss. Get to safety.
That was something I think that we just had to give them, kind of like how Kala pops up after she got shot, and we have that moment. It was just one of those moments where it didn't necessarily have to make sense in context, but it was good, and Detective Mun is so charming.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He's so perfect. They're perfect together, right?
Yeah.
The other thing was
another spinoff I'd love.
Exactly.
Yes.
I mean, I admit also during some of the later fight scenes when the two of them are going after automatic gun-toting bad guys and they're just like beating them up with their arms and their fists and their feet was a little silly, but I was okay with it because that's her character and that's their story. It gave us a little of that Eastern storyline and I was okay with it.
I even appreciated with Sun the fact that during one of the fight scenes, she kind of grabs the guy's hand that's holding the gun as in shooting people. Yep. I don't know if she ever used a gun before in the series, but at least she did now.
Mm-hmm. Well, if one knows it, they all know it, like other languages, remember?
Yeah.
Right, yeah, so that's the thing. Like, they would usually switch to Will or Wolfgang when they needed the fire because they were the better shots.
Do you think that their names are supposed to be Sun and Moon?
Ooh. I hadn't thought of that.
Neither did I.
That's interesting. Anything else on them? We love them.
I love them.
Right. I mean, we love them. There's nothing really to say about it. We were all happy. We're not going to have any debate on that, I don't think, right? Was anyone not happy to see him come? No.
And if you were, this is not the space for you.
Exactly. You're watching the wrong
podcast right now.
Let's move on to the two big ones. So first we have, I'm going to put together Kala, Wolfgang, Rajan, and we'll throw Felix in there too because he's part of Wolfgang's story. We get a little more of Wolfgang's past. We get more of the nasty abuse. And now we find out for sure that it's incest that was going on. That was creepy and gross. Let's throw a little flashback to Ooh Cast. Ew.
Ew.
That is not healthy.
Yeah. It's like we've got a character who like steals and kills and all that, and we kind of understand it given the past he grew up with, right?
When they kind of accentuated revealing the full extent of his backstory with like re-showing him shooting that guy in the face, it was that was pretty powerful. Like you feel that anger like with him. Like,
did you not love Little Wolfgang though? Like singing. Yes.
Oh yeah.
Little Wolfgang was so adorable, right?
Yeah. And also the good thing of that, where it's still like this horrible thing, but it's still stuck to like really the true theme of hope of the show, with kind of him going through his deciding to live and fight back type thing. I am worth it. I can be different than where I come
He's
from.
my favorite character, I think, like hands down.
Yeah. He's mine too.
Like the more I think about it, the more I'm just like, oh my God, I love it. I love him.
Yeah.
I really love that moment where he's not escaping from BPO. He's got the gun in his head, and then Kala's like, fine, I'll jump out the window, and just like the way he screams, that was like, fuck my heart.
Yeah.
He wouldn't have done it for himself, but he'll do it for Kala.
Right. And a small little thing that I really liked in that scene where it first has him like escaping and people are shooting at him, and then eventually the chairman or whatever is like, no, don't shoot him. We need him alive. And he just keeps shooting guys in the face.
Now I can. I can. I've got plot armor now. I've got total plot armor from that
Carte blanche.
He just keeps going. Really, it cracked me up. I fucking loved it. And it was really true to his character as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like, I'm going to capitalize on that.
If we were to count, like, how many people did he kill in those scenes? 50, 30?
Yeah, that was insane.
It still strikes me how, like, a show that's so about love is so ultra-violent.
Yeah.
It's everything. It's funny, it's scary, it's action, it's romance, it's fucking everything.
It's funny.
It is a rainbow.
I'm just starting to rewatch now with a friend, and I'm keep trying to tell him how it's about like love and all this. And then he gets to like these violent scenes, and he's like, "I hate this." I'm like, "No, it gets good. Please trust me. It gets good." And he's just every time these like violent scenes come in, he's like, "Oh, why am I watching this? This is awful." And I'm like, "No, but Daniela is so sweet."
Yeah.
There's literally something for everybody in this show.
Yeah.
I think like they should just like show it in school to people. I'm not even kidding.
Censored versions. Yeah.
That would be a little controversial. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
This is like home ec. Like people should live it, love it, learn it. Period.
I think we all agree with you, but I think there's going to be a lot of people out in the world who aren't going to agree with us on that.
Well, and I just want to jump back to the fact that the whole incest thing got such a reaction out of us. We're Song of Ice and Fire fans. Like,
I know, right?
Do you realize how much incest is in the books that we read? But watching it on TV just gave me this icky feeling.
Yeah.
I don't
Well,
know.
it's also just not the same period and not the
Yeah,
same.
and the big instance in that one is a consensual relationship between two people of an age, not
a father-daughter.
Yeah, it's not rape.
Right.
Oh, awful.
Well, I don't want to get into that.
Let's get
into the funeral scene.
Please, no. On a happier note, how could they have not brought Felix back, right? I mean, do we love him or what? And of course he gets shot, because that's what Felix did.
And I thought he was going to die, and I'm like, no, fuck yeah.
Oh. I mean, yeah, it's a little unrealistic that no one died in this, other than Jonas, but I'm okay with it. Of the good guys.
Yeah. Again, Felix, I think, was all fan service. They brought him back because we love him, and he had to bring the rocket launcher. So
needed that rocket launcher.
Yeah.
So let's move to the heart of the story, both literally and figuratively. We've got our triangle. We've got Rajan shows up out of the blue and is remarkably okay with everything. I mean, how do you not love this character? Let's face it, this is, if anything, the eternal debate that women talk about. You know, do you want the bad boy or do you want the boy who's good to me? Do you want the man who, like, I have passion and with, or do I want the guy who's going to make me happy for the rest of my life, who's going to learn a dance for me in the first couple of episodes, and who's going to just stand with me no matter what crazy shit we throw at him? And it doesn't really get any crazier than this, right?
Right. The solution is to get into a polyamorous relationship with both of them. That's how you do it.
Apparently.
One little thing I really liked about that was like him logicking his way through the situation.
Yeah.
Where it is kind of like a Sherlock Holmes moment. It's just like, well, are you all crazy? Could you actually come up with such a lie? Well, then there's only one possibility left.
Yes, it's got to be.
You're telling the truth. And I thought that was a great little thing that you don't see that in a lot of shows where, actually kind of applying some logic to a situation rather than blowing it out of proportion.
Yep.
Do you think, though, at one point he was like, oh, you're why my dick got broken?
Hopefully he didn't put that all together.
Yeah, they kind of kept that hidden from him.
But there was even a moment where they start talking like, let's change this up.
Yeah. No. Let's not go down that road.
Remember, thankfully it wasn't broken, it was only bruised.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And if you go back to my Chinchilla Dicks episode, I've seen broken dicks before. It would have been a lot more force to break it, so you're doing all right.
It's not a good VOC without some good dick jokes, so let's keep going on this train of thought. I mean, but here's the question. Is this even realistic? Are there men as good as Rajan in the world? I can only hope, for all of us who like men at least, that there are. But I mean, is he not the most understanding, most wonderful? You got to wonder, like, does Kala actually love him? Or does she just appreciate that he's like the best man in the planet?
Yeah, I would say I was questioning that up until this finale, but I feel like they had a few moments of in there where she really seemed to show her genuine love for him, so I believe that she does.
Yeah, I think she has enough love in her heart for both of them. There was that moment after she woke up from being shot, and they shocked her, and she saw Wolfgang first and started kissing him, and then realized Rajan was behind and just stopped and said, oh, my husband, and she brought him in too. So yeah, I just think she's got enough love for everyone.
And I love that Rajan was the one who actually saves her, because he thinks, oh, wait, we had this stun gun. That's electrical. Let's save her heart. I love that he actually does it, and she recognizes that. He was the smart one who managed to save me.
Yeah, and the 2-for-1 when she got out of the car was also a good moment too, along with Bug's statement too. It's like, you kind of defy the laws of physics already, so I would say you can do whatever the fuck you want in this scenario.
I love that Bug figures it out for her.
Yeah.
Oh, that was one thing that kind of took me a little out of it. Not because it's unrealistic or anything, but there's a moment after Wolfgang and her have sex while he's in Berlin and she's still in India. And he says to her, if it's like this now, what will it be in real life?
Mm-hmm. Right.
I kept waiting for a big moment of them touching in real life for the first time, and I didn't feel like I got that, so that was a little bit of a letdown, but whatever, at the same time.
We got their first kiss, but
it's something they had already kind of done with Will and Riley back in season 2.
Yeah, I wanted it for them more in a world where I can get everything I want, while we're wishing for things. That's one thing I'd wish for, but yeah, it's a very minor thing comparatively. So.
Right.
You want to go through just the last Nomi and Mamanita Bug, and then that's it for characters.
I love them. I was really glad at the end with Nomi and her parents. That to me is probably of everything the most unrealistic thing, but this is a fantasy show, and that is the fantasy that people who are ignorant can unshackle themselves from that for the sake of love, especially when it comes to loving their fucking children. And the message there is just, again, I teach it in schools. I share it. Share that message with people. There is no fucking reason to stop loving your children.
Yep.
Unless they're hurting other people. And even then, you still love them. They're your children. I'm really glad that her mom turned around, albeit a little under the influence. But she showed up. She was there. You know what I mean? She was there anyway. And and I'm really glad that Nomi got that. And, I hope the best for them and their life going forward and growing. I can see her mom giving a TED talk in 5 years about, I was once an ignorant asshole too. And I kept referring to him as my son. but she's my daughter, and so.
But then I took a pop brownie, and everything was
I mean, it was a little unrealistic, but do we care?
No, but actually, I do think that she is not. To know me, they are not her family. Right. And that's very clear when Bug walks her, and she's like, "Thank you for being my family."
Yep.
The damage was done. She definitely kept her distance still with them. Obviously, I think Nomi was touched at the gesture of them being there, but she was still kind of a little too late. A little too late with them. That's really realistic that she doesn't just all of a sudden go, "Oh, mommy and daddy." They abused her. Abused her. They almost got her killed. So I think it's nice that she also didn't need to say any of that because, again, it's like when somebody does come to the light side, we don't punish them for having been on the wrong side. All we need to do.
But we don't necessarily jump right in either.
We don't need to praise them for simply doing the right thing.
Right.
We don't need to, kowtow to them like, "Oh my God, you're so wonderful." No, you're doing the right thing. Keep working at it. We might be able to rebuild something new. Right. It's never going to be. What?
And Nomi doesn't react with, "Oh, here's a big hug." She reacts with, "What the hell?" I love her and Amanita look at each other like, "What the hell just happened?" Which was appropriate. It's appropriate.
I love that they're making a gesture. I love that message. More people need to hear it. More people need to come to Jesus and cross over to the side of truth and out of the side of ignorance. But yeah, you don't want to drive them back away by being shitty, but you don't need to praise them either, and you don't need to forgive their abuses to you.
Yeah, and I think that really speaks to something that I think is important, and an important message is that, I don't think people realize the damage that parents can do to their kids. When you do that, it doesn't just magically get better. And I liked that when they looked at you, they're like, what's going on here? Instead of just, "Oh, big hugs and everyone's happy." And I like that they briefly, in a happy way, acknowledge that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. All in all, VOK PSA is if a drag queen offers you a pop brownie, you take it.
Yeah. Never question that. The moment where Bug walks Nomi down the aisle, that was one of my favorite moments of the entire episode, and it's the one that got me.
Thank you for being my family, and then then he says it back to her. It was awesome.
But yeah, I don't in general don't cry often with watching shows or movies or whatever, but that one got to me.
Mm-hmm.
How about their vows? Their vows were just awesome, I thought. I mean, Amanita talks about how feelings are more important than just reason. Trust your feelings, they matter. And Nomi talks about how nothing's permanent after this crazy year, they've lived through. She says, "I can think of no better life than watching Amanita Kaplan change." And she also says, "Inside your arms is the only place I've ever felt home." So perfect, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was beautiful.
They were excellent, yes.
Yeah.
The whole wedding was just amazing.
Completely. I agree.
That was all the emotion in the episode that we needed was in that last 30 minutes.
Right. And we got plenty of other too.
Right, but I feel like that's kind of what left me, because it was the last 30 minutes, it left me feeling that warm and bubbly feeling that I needed to finish the series with.
And I love that Netflix gave them the time to do this because, I mean, really, there wasn't time for that in this finale, but we found it because that's what this show is about. The show isn't about people shooting up people. It's not about conspiracies. It's about people coming together with love. It's about how love conquers all, which is the name of the episode. And our diversity makes us stronger. How all of us with our differences in life, when we learn from each other, we're all stronger. If that isn't the message of both Sense8 and Vok, I think, then what is?
Yeah, perfect. And I can't follow the show notes here on my phone, but that was one of your questions I remember seeing at the end, as to why I think the show is important. I mean, it won't necessarily be as crazy popular in the zeitgeist of it all, but I think it definitely mattered to the people that watched it. And I think that it should be heralded for the themes that it put forth and the hope and good that it represented in all of its episodes.
Exactly. That's where we're kind of in now as our wrap up. So we're moving into the finale here, the end of it. It's all over. These are, I think, the things that are going to live on with us, is these messages, these themes, this feeling of love, this feeling of all of us around the world have come together around this show. We managed managed to make something happen that was somewhat unprecedented before, bringing the show back, because we loved it so passionately and that it spoke to people. People have said their lives were changed from it. And I think all of us are deeply passionate about this show, right?
100%.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Don't you think your life was made better having watched it?
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
I wonder if hopefully this will go on. I mean, one of the nice things about the internet now is that people can watch this show forever. So hopefully it'll bring new people to these messages in the future. And I think these messages live on. Do you think we'll ever have a show like this again?
I hope so.
I hope so, but I don't know if it'll give us the same feelings that this one does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the first is always the best. In so many ways. In so many ways.
I'm excited to give this, a little bit of a break and then come back 6 months or a year down the line and start from the pilot all the way through and, give it a rewatch. Because it's
I've just started
one of those shows that's totally worth a rewatch.
There's so much disposable TV now. So much of it's so good, but there's so much great TV. This is a show I'm going to rewatch probably more than once, and there's very few I can say that about anymore.
Yeah. This is the type of show I would like to do what you're doing, Dave, is find someone that doesn't know anything about it, find someone that doesn't watch it, and just watch them watch the show. Because I feel like I would get, a great reaction out of seeing that, or a great feeling out of introducing this to someone new.
Yep.
Yeah, just share it. This is something to be shared. This is something that it is for all people. It's almost like medicine, really.
Yep.
I was open-minded before Sense8. I would say I'm 100% more open-minded since Sense8.
Yeah. Like David, you said, you asked if this show had made our life better, and I think more than that, it made me better.
Yes.
I don't think I wasn't homophobic. I wasn't close-minded, really, but I had never been moved this way by gay people, by homosexual characters, by transsexual characters before. Yeah. And this really changed my view of all of that. And so that's something the show did, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd always been like, it's okay to be gay, and, they're here, they're queer, get used to it, I've never been to Pride, but I'd love to go, but...
Go, girl.
I said this in the first go-around with the first two seasons, I didn't realize how I still was uncomfortable seeing homosexual intimacy portrayed in the movie, you know what I mean? Especially to women.
Yeah.
And this show just immediately, first scene, and it just didn't feel weird. And that's when I knew this was something I was going to literally not put down for fucking 20 hours. I watched the entire thing in like a day and a half or something.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
Right.
It's so special and amazing, and I can't say enough good things about it. I could literally go on and on. Yeah.
With this show, it's so great that people are able to accept concepts. You accept the concept of homosexuality, you accept the concept of transgenderism, but to be able
people
to
around
put
the world.
a face to it and emotionally invest in someone who is something that you're not necessarily familiar with. I think this show just highlighted that. It was so important to put a face and an emotion to a concept that you're quote-unquote okay with. I accept that, but it's not something that I've ever really known. Like, I know I did the podcast back with Bina for Queer Eye, and she said she has never met really a transgender person in real life, and to be able to see it on TV and see the emotions that they have a real transgender person really brought to light the struggles, whereas I am very familiar and I know people that are transgender, so to be able to see that their struggle is being conveyed on TV and highlighted in such a way, I really think this show is so important for that.
Right. There's a lot of people who get upset about all the talk about diversity on TV. But let's face it, TV, movies are how we experience the world now. We experience it through our friends and whatever, but we don't all get exposed to all different people. How many of us have met someone from India or from Africa or a trans person or gay people or whatever? And when we start to realize, once you get to meet people from other backgrounds and really get to know them, you understand that we all have struggles. We all have emotions. We all have problems. We all have loves, desires. And like it or not, TV and movies are how we experience the world, in that we care about these people more than we do some of our friends. That's pretty fucked up. That's probably fucked up, to be honest.
No.
But it's true. But it's true.
I think that's just how the psyche works, though. You know what I mean?
Right.
it's the private reflection in your mind. You know, it's in the privacy of your mind how you interpret and have intrapersonal communication.
You get to experience things that maybe your friends wouldn't tell you. If your friend was molested by his father, they may not talk to you about that, but here we get this in TV. If your friend's having trouble with health issues, they may not want to talk to you about it, but we get that on TV. We get the unfiltered version of people on TV and in movies. And I think that's why it's always so important. I was a gay activist way, way back in the days, and I always focused on the media because I understood how the media speaks to us as people.
Yeah.
The fact that the Wachowski sisters were able to use this platform to show the stories of real trans women is important and powerful because, you know, even me, I'm gay. I've been around drag queens and trans people for parts of my life, but I've never been like really close to them. And watching the show and you see that Nomi is no different from any of us. I mean, she's very different, but she's no different. Like we're all very different from each other, but yet we're all the same. And that's, I think, the power of great TV.
Yeah.
I don't know if I shared this on the original one, but I had only just found out that the Wachowskis had transitioned right before I started watching Sense8. It was hard for me to process what I thought of it. And then I saw Sense8. I had seen Jupiter Ascending and I wasn't impressed with it. And I didn't think it was their best work. But then I saw Sense8 and I was like, oh my God, this is their best work. This is them at their best. This is who they are. And this is so much better than The Matrix. Going back, you can almost see how stifled they were having to be who they were not. Being the Wachowski brothers. And Lana and Lily are who they are. And look at what beauty comes out when you're able to be who and what you are. And you're encouraged to do it. And you're given money to share it with the world. Now I know how I feel about it. And I feel wonderful about it. You know what I mean? And
given the platform that they were able to do this on Netflix, I feel like they got so much more freedom than anything else that they had ever done. But I also want to say, I think it's so important that this show and FX's show Pose, and even with Orange is the New Black, is portraying transgender characters using transgendered actors, which I think is unbelievable. It's so important, and people don't... Obviously, I think this group of people that we're speaking with right now understands that, but I just think the public as a whole doesn't get it.
Oh, no. To have someone portray trans and not be trans is just as bad as fucking blackface. It's just as bad as that. It's disgusting.
150%. I think a lot of times you see a non-transgender person play a trans part, or a straight person play a gay part, and then they're up for these awards because they've, they're transcendent and they're able to do great acting. And oh my God, Jake Gyllenhaal getting topped by freaking Heath Ledger is the biggest moment. No, why didn't we have two out gay actors play that?
And I don't like Sean Penn as Harvey Milk. It's why?
Right. And
what?
The fact that
what does that
it
say?
took trans showrunners to do this, it's important, and I'm glad it's happening. And I don't know if anybody else watched the FX show Pose, but there are, I think, 6 or 7 trans people portrayed on this show, and every single one is played by a trans actor. And it's where media needs to go right now. There's enough actors out there that you don't have to find someone to get into this headspace or get into this role just because they're a big...
Oh my God, especially just homosexual actors. You know what I mean? Trans maybe. I don't know if there's a plethora of trans actors of that caliber, but certainly homosexual ones, for God's sakes.
This is a tough, complicated question. I can kind of see all sides of it. An actor's an actor to me, but at the same time, I don't know. I'm all torn on it, and I don't think it's something we're going to clear up here. It's all messy and weird. Because, I do believe in diversity in casting, diversity in characters we read and write and hear about and see on TV and movies. And I think, if anything, that's what we need to get from this. Up until now, a lot of the world has seen that when you put a black guy on a show, or a gay guy on a show, or or a trans character on a show, that it's just meeting a quota. But no, it's not. It makes the show more interesting because we're watching different people, different types of people go through different experiences. Do we want to watch the same show over and over and over again, the same sitcom with the same people? We want to see different stories.
We want to evolve.
There are so many great stories in this world about so many people. I don't want to watch a TV show about me. I want to watch a TV show about everyone in this world. And that's what's so great about this show, is that this isn't a show about me. It's about all of us and all the different people in the world. Yeah. I mean, obviously, these are only 8 out of 5.5 billion, but it's certainly probably the most diverse show ever made. And let's hope we get more of it. I love that the new season of Doctor Who has a very diverse cast. We're starting to see that more. And it's not because we're trying to check boxes, as some people argue. It's because I want to hear about different kinds of people in the world, not the same old blah stories we've had over and over again.
You know what, David? I have a friend with whom I've talked about Doctor Who in the last season, and she was all, oh my God, I didn't need to hear about Bill's homosexuality every fucking episode. And I was like, oh, you're one of those people who talked about you on the Who cast.
Right. This is a regular part of people's lives, and it's just interesting. Do we have to have the same kind of characters over and over and over again?
It's a regular part of people's lives, and I think that's Sense8 does a good job of demonstrating it. We talked about in the first cast how a lot of showrunners and studios, they use movies and they use TV to share their own personal politics. It's very force-fed, and it's very often like totally like out of left field. Well, Amanita talks about her politics in the show, but it makes character sense.
Right.
A lesbian raised in a commune living in San Francisco probably feels this way. You know, that was just true of her character, and it didn't feel forced for me. It didn't feel like Lana and Lily's politics coming out. It felt like they had created a character probably based on someone they know or based on themselves that was sharing character traits. And I think that's another thing that is representative of how natural and the fluidity of the show and what makes it something to really marvel at.
Yeah.
Kind of as a closer to what we were talking about, I want to shout out the L Word. If you want stories, you know, like we were just talking about, you should go back and watch the L Word. It was a great show.
I never saw it.
That's on my list.
I've never watched it.
Yeah. Neither did I. Cool, thanks.
But it is available to watch on Netflix.
There you go.
Oh, that's right. It is on Netflix now, isn't it? But yeah, it was originally from Showtime. But yeah.
Now that we're mentioning that, I do want to say, I encourage you all to watch Pose. It's only 8 episodes. It came out on FX. It just finished a week or two ago, and I'm going to put up a CTA for that in a couple weeks.
That actually sounds interesting. I'm going to check that out.
It's something that it literally changed my life. I feel so. I recommend watching it, and then we'll talk about it on a chat.
Which actually leads to my next question, which is, are there any other upcoming or recent episodes of VOC that the rest of you have been part of and want to give a shout out to?
Yeah, the Infinity War VOC.
We don't know where that's going.
That one is stuck in the Darkling Plane.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say recent and upcoming. I was on Mindhunter. That was not recent. Upcoming, I'm not sure.
Tina will approve of that shout out.
Right, yes, thank you. We're doing it when Matt's not even on the podcast.
Yeah, I was really into that show, and I didn't get on the episode because there was already a lot of people, and I didn't feel like I would have anything meaningful to say, but I was like, I really want to listen to this.
Yeah,
so
season
Matt
will probably be out, and then the original VOC will air sometime after that, probably.
One thing I wanted to point out is for those who've been listening and waiting, we're getting back in track on the linear reread project. We've just released 2 of the episodes and more are coming, and we're going to start recording more of them. We'd gotten way, way, way ahead of things, so we kind of were trying to do a little catch-up time. So for those who are fans of our Song of Ice and Fire linear reread, it's back.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a weird time in our lives where we were like recording out of order, and
we were like way ahead.
Yeah, it was weird.
Yeah.
Let's wrap it up. Bring it on home. You can find other episodes of Vassals of Kingsgrave on iTunes, Stitcher, WordPress, YouTube. Search for Vassals of Kingsgrave on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Tumblr, and probably your favorite dating app by searching for Vassals of Kingsgrave or the OK Podcast. Feel free to let us know what you think in the comments, but if you really want to join in the discussion or even jump onto a podcast, look for us on the forums iTunes at podcastoficeandfire.com. Thank you for listening. I'm David, and thank you to Marie, Hannah, Jock, Matt, and James. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, David.
Bye. Thanks,
Bye.
David. Brilliant hosting.
Vassals of Kingsgrave with one R and no D's.
And I didn't even have enough vodka to have an excuse this time.
Oh my God.
Or Novocaine, or all the other stuff I was on, and the Red Bull.
That was awesome.
It was a little forced, but I'm not opposed to a little force.
Someone get their phone or shut it off.
Yeah, it's mine, so I can't.
And you're talking. Yeah,
mute
okay.
it as I'm talking.
Okay.
Are you saying that you have other friends?
How dare you?
Oh, fuck.
Are you saying that you have a landline phone? Is what I was thinking.
Yeah.
What is that?
Well, that could have been.
Why does it have a tail?
I know. Currently, where I'm at, there is a landline phone.
I have a landline phone. If you call my cell phone, it's charging in the other room, and it will not wake me up, and it's soft anyway, so even if it was in the room. I mainly keep the landline just so work can call me if they need me, which is a stupid reason to spend $40 a month, and I probably need to change that. Side
Now,
note.
Jock, you're pretty young. Do you know what a landline phone is?
Well, I don't know. With his reception up there, do you have one? I would think you might have one.
Yeah.
I was
Can
going
we
to say.
explain it for our
Yeah.
younger listeners?
I'm going to cut all that out. That's the only reason I mentioned that was I'm like, well, I'm obviously going to be editing here because.
Hey, we made it almost 5 minutes without needing to cut something out. Fucking great start.
It was a little forced, but I'm not opposed to a little force.
And up until the final line, which you have quoted down in the
Yeah.
show notes.
I didn't think, Rajan saying, I didn't think that such things were possible.
All right.
What is happening?
Hannah.
Hannah, what are you doing?
Hannah came on.
What?
There. Oh, Jesus.
What?
Loud noise. Turn your volume down.
What?
All of a
You're
sudden
very
we're-
loud.
Yeah, your volume got like exponentially louder for whatever reason.
What the
But we-
fuck?
Oh yeah, you're way loud. Can you adjust your mic?
No.
Because even your breathing was something. And that's got to be the bumper too.
Is it better now?
Yes.
Thank you.
The fuck?
I didn't think such things were possible.
What happened?
Oh my God, I feel like we all just ate a brownie. What the hell just happened?
Oh my God.
Oh boy.
Oh, this is so great.
Oh, I'm so happy I'm not sleeping right now.
I don't understand.
We have after show for days. Can I mix up the name of the title again of our group? Oh my goodness. So I need to try to pretend I'm serious again now.
Right.
It was a little forced, but I'm not opposed to a little force.
You can find other episodes of Vassals of Kingsgrave on iTunes, Stitcher, WordPress, and YouTube. Search for Vassals of Kingsgrave on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter.
Again.
Did I?
Yes.
I thought it said right. Did I?
You said
No,
Okay.
no,
the Kingsgrave.
no.
Did I say grade? Oh no.
So you didn't say Kingsgrave again.
You'll never get away from that, David.
Oh well, I'm stuck with it forever.
No,
never,
David,
ever.
you didn't say Kingsgrave. You just maybe added an R and S to King. I don't know.
Okay, I don't know. Well, again, we'll start over again then.
Oh my
well,
God.
I'm stuck with it.
Magical.
Put that in the after show, please.
That's it.
I have to now, right? Hannah, you still have to listen to the first one.
Again, and then just that.
You'll have to listen to the after show of that, by the way, Hannah. Good.
Oh my God.
Oh, that after show is classic. You have to listen to it because
It was
I did go and listen.
funny.
Farley and
Yeah, I did go on and listen to the after show. I was very careful to scroll through.
right. Okay.
Oh man. Oh boy.
Me. Okay, let's wrap this up.
It was a little forced, but I'm not opposed to a little force. I'm gonna head out because I think my husband's getting restless. He's hungry. All right.
He's like, you just remind him the cluster always comes first.
Right, exactly. Yes, and he, I'm gonna convince him to listen to this, so he'll hear how great we were.
Right.
All right,
he'll be your lovely Nando, right?
Yes, he's my Nando. We gotta get a Daniela. All right, I love you too. You have a good night.
Too. I love you too.
We should
Good
go.
night.
Good night.
Night, guys.